I was born during the Second World War, and I brought up by desperately poor. I never saw my father because he was away in the forces, and I can remember my mother giving us stinking food because there was nothing else that's all there was to eat, and it's a very good way of being brought up because once you're used to that, you can live with anything. From the age of 6 or 7, I was just always interested in plants, and if I found something unusual, I got all the more interested. I went to Royal Agricultural College, and I always wanted to work in forestry, and I went into it knowing it was the worst paid job in the world, but I've spent my life falling down sewers and coming out smelling of violets.
My mother was a doctor, actually, which was quite unusual for those days. She was a keen gardener and a botanist. She never really used it. I can remember being interested in plants before I knew that she was really a great gardener herself. If I think about where we first lived in Harrogate for the first 8 years of my life, I can remember almost every tree in the garden there, and I was not consciously noting them, but I can picture them now and how they grew. The other thing is memories of holidays. For instance, there's a pine, a two-needle pine up there, which came from by Loch Awe, where the pine had, it had made loads of seedlings, and I brought one back. It's a big tree now up there. That's probably one of the oldest ones in there. And other ones I just grew from seed because I liked the idea of them.
My grandmother was very careful. When she knew the Germans were arriving, she said, I put everything in a suitcase and I bury it under the cherry tree in the garden. Remember all the nice cutlery, the nice thing, but I want to keep the medal from your grandfather during the First War and all that. Buried under the cherry tree in the garden. Remember when the Germans are going back, one day they will go back, you go back and... But we never found it again. I went with my husband, we tried to find the cherry tree, everything had been bombed, and we went even with a mine detector, nothing there. He was very nice, Picasso, when I met him in Marseille during the war. And I said, you're drawing. He said, you draw what you think you see, not copy what you have in front of you. The camera can do that. It's the first time I noticed that different color in the leaves. I cannot see really what I would do to a good eyesight.
My approach to the drawing would be back from front, middle and back, and going that, and finish off with a type of, in between you had then other, depending now, these things here, if you want them singing, they're just like back arrows, like that, back like that, back like that. And a lot of these used to be, see how they're coming out round here, eh? And then they used to come through from there. And I'll do you some of them, see what you think.
I was in Russia where I shouldn't have been, acting on behalf of someone for whom I should have been acting. And I wandered off what I was sent there for into something I was interested in, which is plants. It was obviously a pine, but it was growing absolutely flat and horizontal. You've never seen a pine doing that before, at least I haven't, but it's a very good survival mechanism. The virtually turned nature inside out. There's a couple of things I've taken into Kew Gardens, and they just looked at it and said, you'll have to wait till the specialists come in. And I decided I wouldn't wait to see the specialists in case they asked more questions I didn't want to answer. The seeds are the easiest thing to bring back because you can put them in your pockets and go straight through customs. I didn't say this, but my stock answer is, oh, it must have been children using them to play marbles.
When we started, we were near a German doctor who was working in Uganda. We used to do the garden together. Take that, it will grow. Plant it, it will grow. They tell you about a pineapple. Cut the top of a pineapple, eat the pineapple, put the top in the ground, and another one will grow. We used to plant things like that under a window to prevent the animal coming too close to the house, because they did not like the spike, so they are not coming too close to the house. I don't know what the gardener was putting, but it was spiky plant like that. He said like that you will not have the animal coming under the window.
The growth of the trees dictates where you're going to walk, doesn't it? And pushes you into certain areas. I know got a boy who cuts my hedges and things, and he has trimmed off some branches from a tree before I saw what he was doing, because they were coming across where we had been walking, and needed to explain to him that the tree has precedence, as it were. We go around it if it comes across. There's a lot to be said for having a tree on its own, because you do see it in it more completely than if it's pushed in among others. So you've got the two things really. You've got the wood, or you've got an individual tree that you're looking at, like this sycamore out here too. It's also extraordinary how quickly everything gets taken over by nature. If you cease to garden, it's not so much in mine, I suppose, because mine is fairly wild and it's got a lot of trees, but I've noticed there was a garden at Writtle, that very stunning front garden there, which I noticed. I think the person must have moved, and the next year it was very, very, and then after 2 years you wouldn't have known that there had been this lovely garden there. It had gone, yeah.
Because all the books tell you that. Because all the books don't want to be responsible for killing plants off. They say feed, liquid feed. It's a complete nonsense. It's a complete nonsense. I mean, Linda would be out. I mean, that bamboo looks lovely, doesn't it? She'd be out watering that every day. I don't water them every day. I don't water them at all. They're perfectly all right.
Most plants will grow anywhere. They need a certain amount of water. They need sunlight, obviously. That's about it, really. Water, sun, and common sense.
Mm-hmm. I see the window as a frame for different little pictures throughout the house, in a way. They've always been very, very connected to me. I don't think of them as almost as separate things, and the house is almost a sort of something that's growing in the garden, as it were. I think being out in the garden has an amazing way of sorting out your thoughts, certainly, and if it's a very calming thing to do if you're worried or upset about something. It's great to go and garden, and it just kind of goes. You get everything into perspective being out there, don't you? I will eventually get to love this garden I'm going to, because it is garden, and it'll make me garden it. It'll be a new learning curve, and I'm quite sure in 10 years, when I can only crawl in the garden, it will be good not to have so much. Well, I'm not quite sure, but I think I ought to think that anyway, that I'll be glad.